Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn more at uber.com/flexibilityworks.
CHEK Podcasts.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Political Capital, your source for all the latest in BC politics. I'm your host, Rob Shaw, as we wrap up week 3 of the BC 2024 election 2-4. I'm still the only one saying it. It has failed to catch on, but I'm going to keep using it right until the end, getting into E-minus 8 days as we record this on a Friday. We are approaching the finish line soon of the BC election. I just want to say off the top, thank you to everyone who came to our very first Political Capital Debate Night viewing party in Vancouver in the past week. Jillian, we were sorry to miss you there, but we did have Adam Olson representing the Greens. Jeff and Allie and I were there. We had a great turnout, a lot of interesting mingling of people from all political stripes. And thank you very much to Uber for supporting not only the show, but supporting the night.
And the first time ever at a bar where people booed turning off a political debate for a baseball game.
It's true. Someone from the sports bar turned on wrestling in the middle of the debate, and then the baseball game, and then they switched back to the debate, and then people were upset at that, and then they moved back to. Anyways, it was good. Thanks to Earls for hosting that, and thanks again to Uber for supporting the show and for supporting us. We'll have more live events in the future, I'm sure, so watch our social media feeds. I don't even need to introduce anyone now because we've all been talking. Jillian, Jeff, Allie here, as usual, the Pod Squad, to take us through, and we might as well start with the leaders debate, the big moment in the BC election campaign. How do we think it went? We've had time to digest it now, and everyone's been talking about it since. Jillian, let's start with you on that. What did you take away from the leaders debate, and how do you think it's impacted the campaign?
Well, I think, just in descending order of how the leaders did, I think Sonia Firstnow did the best. EB did well, kind of falling in the middle, and then Restad probably did the worst, I think. They all had different things to accomplish. I think for Firstnow, she needed to make a really strong value proposition for her, and to appeal to specific voters about why it's really important for it to vote Green. And I think she did that, differentiating herself on important issues to her target voters like climate change and wealth inequality. And also just tone, I think, making the case for why it's important to have Greens in the legislature and not go back to a polarized two-party system. I thought she was really effective. EB, I think, came across well. He's in a different position as an incumbent government, always tougher because, you got to defend your record as well as make the case for the next 4 years. And I thought that he did a good job balancing sort of leveling with people about how difficult it is to overcome some of the challenges in the province and why we're only starting to see progress on them. And talking about what he has to offer, as well as criticizing Restad, which is obviously where he's much more comfortable. And I think some of the strongest moments that he has were criticizing Restad, rather than talking about his own plan. But the reality is, I think that's going to be on a lot of people's minds when they go to polls, unless they're in a more of an NDP Green riding. Restad, I think, didn't come off great. He was very low energy, didn't seem like he wanted to be there, and came out with a couple of gaffes, which I'm sure people have heard about now, claiming off the top that he had just witnessed someone die when that turned out to not be true, and also having a very patronizing response about First Nations issues. So I think that kind of sums up where we are. We're starting to see a little bit of shift in the polls, the Greens coming up in some polls, as well as the NDP, which is, I think kind of shows that a lot of people tuned in, and that's sort of where the race is shifting as we head into the last week.
Yeah, good analysis. I agree with all of that. Jeff, jump in. What do you think?
See, I'm going to try something a little bit different here. That debate was the first chance that many British Columbians had to get to see John Rustad. But some folks might not have seen him. So I've taken the opportunity here to prepare a summary of John Rustad at the debate in John Rustad's voice. All right, so bear with me.
I don't like where this is going. Go ahead.
Thank you to our lady moderator, Charo. So I'm here to talk about the province of British Columbia, and quite frankly, it's a real disaster out there. On my way to the debate, I saw a dirigible explode. Yeah, that's right, an exploding dirigible. Like the Nuremberg. I mean the Hindenburg. And I thought, well, that's just a regular Tuesday in British Columbia. Then I walk past this guy lying on the sidewalk, and suddenly he starts groaning and turns into a zombie. And I think, yeah, that tracks, quite frankly. It's the province of British Columbia under David Eby. Everywhere you look, it's the apocalypse, but with more kale and organic juice bars. People walking around like they're in some kind of doomsday parade, and they still say, it's beautiful here. Yeah, if you like dodging zombie joggers and paying $15 for a green smoothie. Oh, and don't even get me started on those vaccines, folks. Quite frankly, they're no good. And now they've got kids out there eating bugs. Yeah, kids eating crickets, like it's the lunch special. Anyway, back to you, Charo.
He did not get the moderator's name correct. That is accurate. As accurate, yes.
And he was, and I'll be like 10 seconds here. He was cardboard. He had no energy. He was relentlessly negative, and he had a real important opportunity in that debate to say to British Columbians who are worried about the extreme radical things that he's saying and some of his unknown policies, because he doesn't have a platform out yet, that you know what? I'm a normal guy. I'm a stable leader. You can count on me to be safe change from the NDP, and he super failed to deliver that.
Right, Allie. Eby wasn't bad or good. He was just kind of. I thought he was just there.
He was great. He was great, Rob.
I've seen him better. But what did you take away from all of it?
Yeah, he was holding back David Eby. Like, it wasn't the strong performance that we had anticipated he would deliver to go probably the most aggressive against John Rustad. So, no one was really lively in this debate. And, I've mentioned that we're now used to watching the American presidential debates where it's a ton of political theater and it's very high energy and entertaining. This one was very Canadian. It was very just relaxed and calm. And so, but it's interesting to me that the whole like debate culture of this campaign generally, like David Eby needs John Rustad almost as a prop for all of these debates. And the criticism being that John hasn't attended some of the other debates where it's just been Sonia and David, and poor David's not there with his John prop because he's not talking about his things and what he's going to do. He mildly did. I will give him credit. He talked about some things, but 90% of what he was talking about was, well, John fails to do this and John that and John this. The word bubble on John for the debate night must have been insane. But what does that mean? Why should voters care? They should care that David Eby didn't talk about his platform. They should care that John, even if he didn't deliver the most enthusiastic delivery on the policy points, he was talking about policy. The criticism that he doesn't have his platform out, it's coming. But check out the website for Conservative BC. .ca, I think, is the website. There's policy posted every day, almost twice a day. There's information out there on what the plan is, and John stuck to that.
So
can I?
Wait. So the leader in the debate, the big debate that everyone's watching, he can't come out with the policy. They should go to a website. Shouldn't he be saying this on the debate with the TVs?
Not out.
The platform, yeah.
But he should be talking about his platform.
The policy is out.
He wasn't talking about his platform at all. Don't go.
Let me just copy and paste all of the policy pieces, and it's going to be the platform. It's not like we haven't heard absolutely anything from what their plan is. It's just not with a cover photo that says BC Conservative platform. The policies are there, Jeff.
Or
I don't see how is he going to pay for it? I don't see how he's going to pay for it anywhere.
Just why nothing gets done on this panel. I'm still wondering, in this day and age, 2024 election, what's the pros and cons of waiting until 8 days before the election to produce your platform, like a costed platform? Do parties, are they tempted to not even do platforms anymore? They just do their policies and don't put them out, and Jillian don't even cost them. Why so late, and does it matter, do you think?
I think that the Conservatives have been feeling out if they could get away with that, because they have been they're in a situation, we've been calling it fluid, where, was it weeks or months just before the writ dropped, the BC United bowed out. And it was it's probably, people don't want to go down this rabbit hole with me, but it's interesting to think about what if we had Falcon on that stage and how different would those dynamics have been. But I think, they have changed some of their platforms since then. They scrubbed a bunch of stuff from it. There was I was looking for one particular promise that was about cracking down on environmental protesters that they had put out prior to the election, and it's gone from the website. And I talked to some other folks who'd been watching that, and they noticed some other things have been changed as well. So I think the Conservatives have been in a situation where they went back to the drawing board with their strategy once they realized they weren't now they're trying to be a bigger tent party, but kind of, make that strategy up as they've gone along. So I think that the platform has not been in process for as long as the NDP and Greens have been. And that's why we saw them release their costed platform earlier. Typically you would release it before a debate. I'm not sure if I've ever seen a party not release a full platform before a debate. So I think that since it's an upstart party, people are wondering if they can trust them, if they're ready to lead. I do think it matters that they don't have it out, and they need to get it out, because I think that there are some of those centrist, kind of more pragmatic voters that will care about that. You got to have a plan, especially when one of your biggest criticisms of the sitting government is overspending.
Yeah. Jeff, Allie, just quickly, flip the argument around. After the debate's done now, what do the parties need to do to either capitalize or reposition themselves after the performances in the debate? Then we'll move on to some other topics. Jeff.
Okay, I'll go first. The reason why you don't put something out until the end of the campaign is because the end of the campaign is all about voter mobilization. It's very, there's not a whole lot left to do on the persuasion side. Folks in the public opinion polls that we're seeing are pretty locked in to their vote choices right now. And so the campaigns and people focus on, what do I need to do to get out and vote? Where do I go? When do I do it? How do I factor this into my day-to-day life? And, there's a lot of folks who get to campaigns and are like, this has been kind of a dull campaign, or I've just got other priorities and I'm not going to show up. And so all of this last few days, I think as we tape this, it's E-8 days until the election. And so, the campaigns are just going to be getting their vote at cards ready to put on the door. So let folks know where to go vote. They have their battalions of door knockers and phoners getting ready to call people. And they're doing it now because voting started, to telling folks to get out to go and vote. And in this kind of activity context, people are not going to pay attention to costed platforms and detailed policy prescriptions. It's right now, it's just all about motivating your voters to actually show up and vote.
Okay, we'll circle back to getting out the vote probably in the audio version of this podcast. Allie, just close us off on anything the parties might be doing in the wake of the debate because of how it went.
Yeah, Jeff's absolutely right. At this stage of the campaign, you're mobilizing the support, but there are still a ton of undecided voters out there. And somebody was saying, I'll make a decision 5 minutes before I go to the ballot box. I didn't really think that was an actual true statement, and people just said that for the sake of saying it. But I think that's really going to be the case this time around. And so when the platform does come out, it will have those answers. And so I don't think it's too late at all.
Let's move on to another topic here. Almost every single day of this campaign, and certainly every show, we have been talking about candidate controversies for the BC Conservatives. There were two more this week. I mean, they just keep coming. There was a Surrey South candidate, Bruce Chapman, who CKNW host Jazz Joe Hall posted some screenshots from around 10 years ago of him disparaging Palestinians and Muslims by saying that they are little inbred, walking, talking, breathing time bombs, figuratively and quite literally. That comment roundly criticized Rustad, apologized. The candidate apologized. People are debating what to do in the wake of that. Completely overwhelmed a press conference John Rustad was holding on his BC Ferries plan. And then later in the week, Dallas Brody, sorry, I'm going to redo that because my cat feeder just went off. Made a bunch of noise in the background there. You can keep that in. That's fine. Keep it in. This is authentic moments. My automated cat feeder just went off.
Ophelia's got to eat.
Ophelia's got to eat. Later in the week, Vancouver Quilchenic candidate Dallas Brody at a public debate saying if First Nations people want to have rights, they need to have responsibilities and go to the downtown east side and pick up all their people, which is a ridiculous comment. And anyways, both of them are ridiculous comments. And I just wonder what happens. Why are we still dealing with this three weeks into the election? What is the impact of it? Is the public tuned out? Are they still tuned in? Does it have the same impact at the start of the election when we were talking about it, Jillian? How are these landing? What are they doing at this point to the Conservative campaign other than overwhelming press conferences John Rustad's trying to hold to talk about other issues?
Yeah, I think that these coming right after the debate when a lot of people, I think, were tuning into for the first time. I actually think that's why we didn't see a lot of poll movement in the first 2 weeks. People have been very busy. It's the fall. There's a big US election that's, like Allie described, much more entertaining. So I think that these hitting now are having a bigger impact than we saw some of that kind of flood of opposition research coming early in the campaign. And I think, some of those things that came out in the initial opposition, I think people can excuse a social media post when someone was in college or a teenager from 10 years ago. These are posts that were made when this candidate was well into his 50s or 60s and, an adult who should have known better. He's got multiple instances. He also called for a boycott of Air Canada because they were airlifting Syrian refugees, who I think are a group of people have a lot of sympathy for and think that was the right thing to do. And, I think in Dallas Brody's case, this is a fresh video from a debate that just happened. It's not past comments. She was responding to past comments, but she obviously doesn't feel bad that she made them in the first place and doubled down on them. And video, I think, is always more of a powerful medium for people to actually hear it straight from somebody's mouth. And I think it's coming at a time, like we talked about, when Rustad didn't have a great debate performance and people are kind of, starting to have doubts about him. And I also think that when it comes to like incumbent governments that have been around for a long time, people like to, when they're responding to pollsters or expressing public opinion, have sort of like a little bit of an emotional release. And then when they get close, I guess Ophelia didn't like the robot meal.
Get out of here. Get lost.
She wants the
I've already voted. Get lost. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt you there. Voters are having an emotional reaction.
Yeah, when they get closer to decision time, it becomes a lot more real and a lot more serious, and they're looking at things a lot more seriously, and really thinking through the consequences of what does this mean for my life and for the life of other people that I care about in the province for the next 4 years. And so that's why we're starting to see more attention and a reflection in polling numbers.
Allie, let's just bring you in on this one. What do you make of, I guess, both candidate controversies continuing to sort of overwhelm the leader's message at this point in the campaign, 3 weeks in, but also the cumulative effect of these continuing to happen throughout the election campaign?
Well, yes, it has happened throughout the entire campaign, and not surprising that in the last critical days of the campaign that it would be ramped up, mind you, to the self-infliction of some of these candidates. But at the core of what this campaign should have been, it should have been about a good, healthy policy conversation. And so I've been tuning into various chambers of commerce across the province, local chambers and small communities. And rather than talking about the big issues that are impacting BC, the NDP candidates are going off about, well, John Rustad this and John Rustad that. And like, is it really healthy for the conversation? Probably not. Do voters care about it? I think that's the core of the question. Do voters care? And I think there's a divide from people that I talk to on the ground that voters care about what is the path to get rid of the NDP. And by doing that, it's voting for the Conservative candidate so that they can get in based on the model that we have. And so I think that the NDP will try, and they will continue to bring up some of these issues that are happening from local candidate comments. But it's a diversion from talking about policy.
Jeff, let's bring you in.
It's interesting that Allie mentioned debates happening at chambers of commerce, and wouldn't it be nice if they were focused on policy? I noticed that the Surrey Board of Trade had an event on Thursday night, and John Rustad decided to not attend that and then have some of his campaign surrogates make fun of the Surrey Board of Trade and their event. David Eby showed up, and Sonia Furstenau was going to show up, but she was not feeling well on the campaign trail, and the Conservatives made fun of that as well. I've been struck throughout the campaign about the "we are victims" tone coming from the Conservative leader in the Conservative camp. People who are saying, "Oh, the NDP's just mudslinging and they're not talking about the issues." Well, this is a job interview for the people who are going to run our province, who are going to be in charge of our schools and our hospitals. And it's about more than policy. It's about judgment and character. And what we've seen throughout this campaign from Conservative candidates has a decided lack of judgment and character, whether they're talking about vaccines or 5G genocide or making stuff up about things happening on the streets, head into a debate, or saying disgusting things about the Muslim community and First Nations, as though residential schools just didn't happen. And it's not the NDP making stuff up. They're prosecuting the Conservatives on judgment with the very words uttered by Conservative candidates, and they're prosecuting the leader of the Conservatives because his spine has disintegrated into dust, and he has refused to take any action to hold anyone in his party accountable for anything that they say or do. And so folks who are going to be going to the ballot box on October the 19th and the days leading up to that are right to consider these issues alongside the policy piece, because they are germane and material and important considerations as we decide who's going to run our province for the next 4 years.
Okay. Just one clarification on the John Rustad talking about the overdose that he saw. Did turn out that it occurred at a different location and was not a fatal overdose. The person survived. So just there was like 2 days of trying to figure that anecdote from the debate out. Jeff mentioned it there. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week with all the latest here on Political Capital. Political Capital is brought to you by Uber Canada. Learn more at uber.com/flexibilityworks.